welcome to Films and That. My name is Sam Hall. Today we're doing a little bit of a different format. Obviously Rob isn't here, we still do Films and That together, but I'm just doing a kind of one-up episode on something I'm particularly passionate about this time. Episode's going to be shorter and scripted, if I'm honest. I'm going to be exploring the that side to Films and That this time. Talking about a TV show, I'm not just going to do TV shows every time, you know, I'm going to do films and whatever. But I just wanted this first one where it's just me, just to talk about something that I'm quite passionate about. So here it is, The League of Gentlemen. Farcical, bizarre, and above all, kind of creepy, the show was co-created by 4 writers/actors, Steve Pemberton, Reece Shearsmith, Mark Gatiss and Jeremy Dyson. It combined a sketch show format with a running narrative for each of its characters, all set in the fictional nightmarish town of Royston Vasey. So if you're unfamiliar with the show, it has a little bit of a sort of Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Wicker Man feel to it. This kind of aspect of it is perhaps brought out most of all by the 2 characters of Tubbs and Edward. Owners of a small isolated shop on the outskirts of town, Tubbs and Edward like to keep to themselves. So much so that they don't appreciate customers, especially ones who aren't local. The strange appearance is emphasised by their outlandish behaviour, their failure to understand economy or a kind of basic level of professional etiquette. They spend more time making their potential customers feel unwelcome, making threats to them and going on angry tirades about the past and how anyone not local is sort of poisoning the town in some way. As their story progresses, their actions become more and more sinister and absurd, but ultimately you do have sympathy for the character of Tubbs, who, despite all of it, loves her husband and kind of longs for a bit more freedom, but ultimately Edward is always trying to shut her off from the rest of the world. In the second series, he also brought in a son called David, who... Well, he actually appeared in the last episode of the first series, but then they kind of made him a monster at the beginning of the second series. You never quite saw his face. That's actually a bit of a theme with some of the characters. You don't always quite see everything. In fact, one character, Babs, you never see her face. We just saw parts of her face, but you never see the entire character. So there's a comedy in this show, you might be asking. There are jokes here and there. But a lot of the humour is brought about from the kind of general unease and finding commonalities in a community gone mad. Perhaps the most appropriate term to use is black comedy. That is, the series aspires to explore those darker elements of the human psyche that become so absurd that you can do naught but laugh at how utterly deranged it all is. Take this famous scene, for example. The setting is 3 friends sitting in a pub, telling each other jokes. One of them, Jeff, goads his friend Brian to retell a joke they recently heard elsewhere. Trouble is, Brian can barely remember how it goes, and Jeff becomes more and more angry as he finds himself having to remind Brian what happens. It is clear to everyone involved that Brian simply can't remember, but Jeff has a breakdown and eventually pulls out a gun, threatening to kill the 3rd friend, Mike, if Brian doesn't get the joke right. The comedic aspect isn't derived from the punchline, and certainly not from the joke they were telling, but from the tension arisen by Jeff over such a minor issue. Almost all the characters in the show, particularly the more popular ones, have a bit of an arc. Some become more sympathetic as the show goes on, some a bit more sinister. In particular, the character of Mr. Briss and the horrifyingly memorable circus owner Papa Lazarou. Despite these arcs, though, all these characters are kind of defined by their starting sketches, the first sketch they appear in, usually. It's as if they were initially written as one-dimensional characters and then just got developed and became more and more three-dimensional as the show went on. And that's quite unusual, for a sketch show format in particular. You wouldn't have that at all. You take Little Britain, for example. It's usually the same joke every single time. But with this one, you really get some kind of depth with these people. And for me, that's one of the draws, actually. The production values aren't bad for a British sketch show stroke sitcom. The setting has a haunting quality to it. The skies are often gloomy, the streets are drab, and at times it can even appear a little bit gothic. Throughout the entire show run, there is a common theme. The co-creators love horror. Each of them confess to absolutely loving things like Hammer horror, and that's kind of what inspired to them, especially kind of the period a little bit after that as well, with the kind of more psychological horror films. You've got films like Don't Look Now, The Exorcist, The Shining. All these films are referenced throughout the series, actually. What makes this team so dynamic is not just the innovation of a horror comedy sketch show, but how they bring the characters alive. You almost believe that they have lives of their own, even if they are absurdist and surreal. Of course, you know it's man under that wig. It doesn't detract from the nuances and layers that makes the likes of Pauline or Iris women in their own right. So, if you like a strange, uneasy feel to something kind of quirky, then yeah, watch League of Gentlemen. Even if you don't, just give it a try, you know. But don't feel bad about giving the film a miss. It wasn't all bad, but you know, it just didn't give you the same kind of feel and experience that you got from the TV show. Okay, so that's it this time on Films and That. My name's Sam Hall. I hope to see you again, and we'll be seeing Rob again. I don't know if he's going to be doing anything on his own, but we are definitely doing stuff together anyway. So, goodbye.